Now, what about, say, someone wants to start a business, but because of all these regulations, this is what I hear a lot from people. They can't do business in Sacramento because it's not a business-friendly city. How do we resolve that?
Yeah, so I kind of look at that problem in two ways. On the one hand, you have the public policies that come out of legislative bodies, whether that's a city council, a county board of supervisors, the state legislature, the U.S. Congress. They say that we're going to create this law that protects the environment by limiting, for example, CO2 emissions, which, are greenhouse gases and are ultimately warming the planet. We're not taking a position on sort of those high-level policies. So on the one sense, when people talk about regulation, that's one piece of the pie that they're referring to. Another piece of it is just how are those rules being implemented? Because I think if you give businesses and citizens sort of a more transparent way to understand the environment in which they're operating as a result of these laws that are being passed, this regulatory framework, if you will, you can give them the tools to navigate that process much more simply, much more easily. And when people think about red tape, sometimes they're thinking about the sort of higher level laws and policies, but oftentimes they're thinking about just the process of figuring out what's the answer here. A lot of times you don't even know which public agency it is that's dealing with a certain domain, and we have local, state, federal levels of government, and obviously a lot of people take civics when they're in high school, but that's not necessarily something that you need to know.
Plus, a lot of that information gets outdated 10 years later.
Right, yeah.
I was thinking some of the people who have complained about regulations, it wasn't so much about the environment, which I think a lot of people support, more about just the permits and just, the stacks of things you have to go through to start a business.
Sure, I mean, ideally what we need is a one-stop shop. When you go to Amazon.com, you can find pretty much anything you need. Amazon doesn't tell you, oh, we don't sell this, you're going to have to go over to this website to find what you're looking for. They provide you or even like Google, it's a search engine, it gives you the information you need, and even using Google, it's hard to figure out which public agency you need to deal with. And so, this concept of permitting where you have different departments, whether it's, building inspection, health, public health, why not consolidate all of those into a single permit? Why do you have to have all these different permits in the first place? I think that's something worth exploring. I know people in the cities within our region are having that conversation, and I'd like to be a part of it, and I think that technology is really going to be the tool that allows us to get to that end state that we want to go.
Now, back to your website, publicinnovation.org. Do you see that as becoming a roadmap that resolves all these issues for people, like a place to go to as a one-stop shop that directs people to different agencies?
Something like that could be a project that we pursue, but I don't see public innovation itself as necessarily being that. Publicinnovation.org is really just our web presence. For Public Innovation, which is the nonprofit that I am trying to start, it's really focused on bringing people together through in-person interactions. I know there's a lot of solutions out there where people can engage online, but I think the real knowledge discovery and empathy and creative problem solving really needs to happen in person, where people can interact with each other in that kind of a way.
Do you mean like a public discussion or just individuals?
Both. So,
okay.
So for example, the Civic Meet Sacramento, these meetups that we're having, it's almost like a cross between a public meeting, where if you've ever been to a public meeting, you go there, you hear information from public officials and you sort of give your feedback and then you go home. Civic Meet is more like a meetup where you can just hang out with people, split into groups, discuss some problems, and actually try to solve them. So if you have 100 people in a room for 2 hours, that is 200 man hours that you have. In the public meeting context, that's just a bunch of listening and hearing. If you spent that same 200 man hours in a civic meet setting, we're actually designing solutions and potentially working on figuring out how to implement them. And so it's all about taking advantage of the human capital that we have as a society that's of people that are willing to engage in this process and getting them together and using their time wisely to actually apply some of the ideas and pursue them.
Ash, one more thing before we go. Once again, tell us about the February 21st, 2013 event.
Sure. So that's going to be at the Urban Hive at 7 p.m. You can get more information by going to publicinnovation.org/civicmeet or just publicinnovation.org. It's on the homepage. We're going to be screening this movie, and then we haven't quite figured out what's going to happen after the movie, but we definitely want to use that as a catalyst for a conversation about some of the things that are on people's minds, and hopefully get them to come out to future Civic Meet events where we're actually in talks right now with some public agencies to figure out, can they approach us with some problems that they're actually dealing with, so that by the time we have the next Civic Meet, which would be in March, can we give people something to work on that's a tangible project that would actually be implemented? And that's pretty exciting. So we'd love to have people come out and participate.
All right. Thank you, Ash.
Yeah.
It's publicinnovation.org.